13 years ago, an attempt to bring Avatar The Last Airbender to life on screen turned into a disaster. The four elements were out of sync, and fans were left in dismay. But now, in a world still recovering from that cinematic misstep, a new series unfolds. Join us as we explore this next chapter in the Avatar world on the next... Oh, shit.
Oh, that was really good up until you were about to go Dragon Ball Z on that.
I know.
I meant to say on this episode of the podcast. Oh, well, that was good enough, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, let's roll then.
All right, but yes, we're back for another mini episode. You know, even though it's not anime, according to some people, it's
not anime. It's an animated cartoon.
It is animated, but
all cartoons are animated. You want to try that again?
Are all cartoons animated?
It's an anime-inspired cartoon.
Because a regular cartoon is, No, I'm tripping. I'm thinking of a comic strip, bro. Literally, bro. Gosh.
But we're here. We're here. The new Avatar: The Last Airbender just dropped on Netflix a couple of days ago. We're here to talk about this journey that is Avatar. OG.
The good and the bad. And is it better than the M. Night Shyamalan movie? We'll all find out.
Is it redemption worthy?
Yeah, we'll all find out soon.
Mm-hmm. We all watched it start to finish, all 8 episodes.
To clarify another point real quick, actually, I have not, out of the three of us, watched the original animated series. I saw the M. Night Shyamalan attempt movie, and currently on the Netflix series, but I'm pretty sure both of you have watched all 3, correct?
I think that's your highest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I actually never watched the M. Night movie.
At a 3.
You've never watched it?
It was too bad.
But
how do you know if you didn't watch it?
I didn't finish it.
Oh, but okay. You watched some of it. I thought you
watched
never
some
even
of it.
like...
Okay. Yeah. But no, I know.
No, I do remember being in, I think it was middle school at that point. And literally as it's just going on, yelling at the screen with everyone else around me about just how disappointing it was. But to reel back in of what I was going to say and why I cut Chris off was, I guess, since we watched all of it, initial just, thought out there, if you had to sum it up in one or two words, what were your thoughts?
Okay.
Sai?
I enjoyed it. I don't know.
I thought you were going to say fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah, good try.
Can't believe you did it again.
Wait, what?
Can't believe they did it again.
Oh, you said me do it again. I was like, do what?
Did it again.
In a world of adaptations, it's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen. But, all right, yeah. Chris, you can jump back to where you were.
I was just going to say, the show has a lot of good moments, but also has a lot of bad moments. Some okay moments. But overall, like I said, it's just okay. And I don't know if it could be completely bad to some people. I might be biased because of the original animated show. And, I feel like the creators of this version, the real people version, was like
Netflix live action.
Yeah, to remain true to the story. They cut out things that, worked well being cut out, but they also combined things that didn't work well together. But, we'll talk about it later. Yeah. I don't want to get into it all right now.
Yeah, if we look at it, this is a beloved series. I think it's an award-winning series too for storytelling and everything. I forget the exact award.
Did it do better than One Piece's streaming as well?
No.
This
for launch.
It had a 10% higher stream record for the launch of the series, which just goes to show you that the OG cartoon is probably way bigger than even One Piece is for all that it is. And globally recognized. Yeah, I guess that. But if we look back at this, this series was originally announced in 2018 in partnership with Nickelodeon and Netflix. We're announcing the original creators coming back to give us the next installment after Korra, which I think wrapped up in I want to say 2014 or something. But the excitement and the news around it, the actual creators were going to be adapting the live action as opposed to a studio handing it off to somebody else was something to get excited for. We all got excited for it, I know, in I think it was episode 1 or 2 of our podcast. And, pandemic hits, creators leave due to
creative differences.
Creative differences between the studio and them. And then Netflix also puts out a trailer to comfort the mind, stating that every CGI and special effects studio under the sun would literally be working on the series. And to that, I say, show me the money, because I don't know where that budget of... Can anyone guess how much they spent per episode on this?
20 million.
Close to, no, not 20 million. I'd say 15.
It's 15.
I was like, Chris's original number was going to be like $1 million.
No, 50 million per episode, which is only 3,000 less. Not to bring up what everybody likes to do and comparing things to, what's it called? The HBO show,
The Sopranos.
Yes, The Sopranos. No,
The Last of Us.
No, the other one.
There's so many HBO shows.
The Dragon one.
Us...
Oh, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yes, which had a budget of 18 for its first season, 18 million per episode, and had way less CGI and everything for that. I just don't know where that budget went when most of that stuff was on green screens and video walls.
It went to the green screens and video walls. Those things are expensive. Traveling out to a location costs way less than using that kind of technology.
It does. And, it most of the time looks way better.
But they also look at other places, and this is another comparison. Look at Star Wars, look at Lord of the Rings. Unless you can get the land to look exactly how you want it to, like Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, New Zealand, there are spots that you can be like, wow, this is the Shire, this is Hobbiton right here. But I feel like you guys are having definitely a different opinion than me, because I thought the visual effects in this were very good, coming down from, if we're talking about the environments.
I never said it was bad.
It sounds to me
things that didn't work.
I just said it's not $15 million per episode worth what
I think
some of the maybe episode 1, 3, and then 7 and 8 all looked great scene wise, but everything else was kind of like, where did the rest of this budget go?
Yeah, but you have to consider the fact that while each episode costs that much money, it's not all just going into the people working on the special effects. It's going towards
that. But
that's where it goes.
Also, where are you going to find the southern and northern water tribes? Where are they going to go to the Antarctic? There's dangers.
And whatever they did, it looks good. In my opinion.
But I will say this too: you can definitely tell at certain points where they put a lot more effort and money into. Let's break it down. Some of the fight scenes, for instance, in the beginning, the Airbenders and the Fire Nation, right off the bat, craziest fight scenes that I see. Very good special effects. And then you look at
I don't think that. No,
you disagree that is not good.
The opening sequence.
When the Fire Nation attacks?
The opening sequence.
I'm talking about when they're fighting each other, actually in the Airbending Kingdom.
No, the Airbending Kingdom I did not think was good. When the opening sequence when he's running through the city and they're doing all of that, and it goes up into the Fire Lord capturing him and burning him alive, that was great. But then we got to the Air Temple, which aside from the pacing of the story and just throwing a bunch of things around, I did not think was as good of a fight, which they on social media were talking about. They wanted to show the brutality and the more in depth of the Airbenders, and I felt like they missed the mark on that.
How though? I mean, you seen people straight up get roasted in that fight.
It's so you have in the series, which it's episode 3, which they took the first 3 episodes and kind of mixed them together in a way that wasn't terrible, but they talk about the brutality of it. You see all these dead bodies, both of airbenders and firebenders there, showing that there was an actual battle. But instead, they just have the firebenders show up and murk everybody with no real like fight back. There was not really anything showing that
they
these
masters,
these master airbenders, who literally they talk about in the series, sucked the air out of the room, suffocating like a bunch of them and showing like how dangerous both sides were. They get overpowered like within the first 5 minutes of it, and it's just burning a bunch of them alive.
Okay, but then like I look at much.
It's not really showing like that there was equal footing, and they kind of just like chalked it up to like.
So then,
thank God this meteor was here to like help out with
that's 2 different things though. I'm talking about like the actual the martial arts, the actual fighting, how well it was done then. But you're talking about a specific piece that was from, I'm guessing, the animated series, which is just to show how strong the airbenders really were.
That's what I'm saying. Really that doesn't exist. It doesn't.
That's what I mean. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying separately.
When you're creating this, and in turn, the little bit of martial arts was fine, but the overall scene. The overall
VFX
scene that
was bad to you for that.
The overall scene that they're trying to build there, and show like this piece of the story that is something new and bringing to the table of it, just didn't happen, and it just showed more of like these firebenders are just burning everybody, and every attempt that they have to show them doing something like war worthy and like defending themselves is just cut within a matter of seconds.
I get what you're saying, but my argument is that I don't think the that's not a VFX thing. That's a story. That is part of the storytelling.
Fighting. The way that they in turn showed off the actual like airbending and firebending does not really line up with how it should be, or in turn really martial arts. It was more of just focusing on just like, okay, some of the fighting and then coloring in the CGI around it, which doesn't always line up.
But I also think, so coming from me who hasn't seen the original animated, what they're trying to tell in the first episode for me is that like they were attacked. I know that the airbenders are more of defenders and peaceful. Okay, so it would make sense to me in my head that these ruthless, aggressive Fire Nation soldiers are just going to come in and destroy. And the first airbender, when they were getting attacked, was just hitting a bunch of them right off the bat. Granted, if they did show the airbender masters killing many of them at a single time, like, wow, you'd say, yes, they're very strong, but into the story of what they're trying to make that scene, like the point of them telling it is that, like, we know that the airbenders are going to get wiped out. We know that we want to show the brutality of the Fire Nation, and we want to see like empathy or sympathy towards the airbenders, basically. Like, I think they didn't do as much with airbending for like, you know, destroying the Fire Nation or showing, you know, more of them dying, but I did think they still put up a good fight, and they still showcased that the airbenders could fight, but that they were just overpowered.
I agree with Sai, and especially because in the show they mentioned the monks are non-confrontational people, and the fact that in this show that it wasn't shown lines up with that statement. But that's not to say that they didn't fight. They obviously showed skeletons of Fire Nation bodies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially, I like the tornado thing. The tornado thing I thought was really cool. That the one master did in front of the bridge. I don't know.
I feel like the creator they took a look at that scene and was like, how can we steal everything we can from Star Wars and make this and have our Padawan murdering scene?
I mean, technically, Avatar was created after Star Wars and after the Padawan scene, so you could say the animated took the same thing.
It didn't, because again, this whole scene doesn't exist in the animated series.
There's a lot of scenes that don't exist in the animated series.
I think that's the difficulty with any live action anime, or excuse me, not anime. You know, animated live action. If we talk about anime, if we're talking about this animated series that we're originally talking about, you're going to have people who are the diehard fans of the original series, okay? And if it is not a cut-for-cut perfect remake of the show that they love, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be so critical towards it. Like, oh, you changed one little tiny thing. This whole thing's ruined for me. Why would you do that? But then I can even hear Chris. I know Chris loves it, but even from just talking, he's like, yeah, some things they have to cut out, that they could tell the story in a different way that still gets the point across, versus, hey, I don't think this should have been changed because it doesn't have this much of an impact, you know?
No,
and that's,
I wanted that to happen. I wanted to see that. Those are things that should be explored more whenever you do a live action. I just think everything in the first episode is taken just like a lot of other things do, of like, it's an exposition dump and sped through and like a speed run of like, this is everything we're going to do show, when there are many other ways they could have taken that scene and spaced it out within that first hour-long episode that would have made more sense for it.
I do say this. It definitely does reflect, you know, because the original series that they're going off of, how many episodes is that? 20, you said?
It's 20 episodes, yeah.
So they're trying to cram 20 episodes worth of content into those 8 different episodes, which that's definitely hard. I think if Netflix gave them more episodes to kind of slow the pace down, I think that would have been more beneficial for it.
I have to agree with Sai. For example, the episode with Omashu, Jet, and the Mechanist. Like, all of those things in the animated version happen at very different times.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they decided to have it all in one episode. And it felt rushed and unnecessary, but it could have worked, like I said, if they gave them more time to breathe. Jet and Katara. Like, in the animated version, that arc had a lot to do with Katara's like character development and realizing Jet like isn't in the right. And Sokka had a big part in that situation too, and he didn't even talk to him in the live action. Like, I don't even think they saw each other.
No, they didn't. They took, and I was looking at it, they took 8 different episodes and combined it, including an episode from season 2, which just kind of makes it think of like, why are you trying to cram as much in here, the things that doesn't even matter until right now.
Well, they did meet though, Chris. They met when they got into Omashu, the city. Remember, they jumped in his wagon.
Yeah. That's the only time they met. But I think
who met?
Jet and
Sokka.
No, that's not Jet. Oh, that's another character.
No, that was Jet.
That's 100% Jet.
It's not. That character,
look it up,
is from the original cartoon, which is a guy that helps them in. It's not Jet.
No, in the live action, it's Jet.
Because they talk about when they came back in, and because he gave Katara the robe or whatever it was, and they see each other afterwards, and that's why they know each other. Because if she just met some random person in the show, they recognize him right away.
Yeah.
In the cartoon, it is a random person.
Yeah, it's someone else. But like I said, this live action is a different vision. It has a different tone. Sure, it's staying true somewhat to the animated series and has like the lore, but it's different. Like, it's trying to tell a different story in the same story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's tough though. Honestly, when you look at trying to adapt something, there's a lot of pressure for one on Netflix, but even the creators, and that's why there's probably so much creative difference. You know, you got the originals that are saying like, hey, we want it this way, and everyone's passionate about the story, of course, and they want to tell it the right way, and they want to, you know, do all the fans justice. When we look at how they have to rush certain things, like maybe like if like, hey, if this does well and they get a season 2, right? Maybe Netflix is like, hey, we're going to give you 12 episodes,
right?
You know, because we know if we give you more time, look what's going to happen. You know, not if we rush through it. But yeah.
Well, the series was, when it was announced, as a 3-part season, just like the original series. So okay,
so they are fully greenlit.
That's what it was originally pitched as on the Netflix. But it doesn't mean that.
But here's the thing. I know we talked about this before on this podcast. Netflix, and like, I get so frustrated when I start to enjoy a show or I want to see where it's going to go. All these streaming services cancel, and you're just like, all right, well, why do I want to even try to get into it? So, and I know they put a lot of money into this, so I'm hoping they don't cancel it because I want it to keep going and give it a chance.
Well, when it was announced as all 3 seasons, and they showed the artwork for each one.
Yeah,
on that Netflix Geeked.
Doesn't mean that Netflix might not chop it if it doesn't do well, you know. But yeah, no. So the pacing, if we had more episodes, definitely would be better. I know we kind of rambled on about that part for a little bit, but
I want to talk about something that happened in Omashu, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes throughout all 8 episodes. It is between Aang and Zuko, the chase scene, and then they end up fighting. This like has no special effects too, as far as I know, but they're fighting like tangling in the cloth. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And then the scene where he like runs into a market, Aang's on a table,
and then
some old lady comes and starts beating Zuko. Like that scene,
stop hitting that boy.
I feel like that sequence of scenes really nailed the feel of the animated version. Like you really feel the characters from Aang.
I totally agree with that. Yes. And I think that's what also in turn is why I didn't like it as much, because there's a lot of absence of that. I went back and I watched a little bit of like the movie the other night since I had already watched everything, and the amount of practicality with just the like special effects and the like physical humor, because this is a very humor centric series, which I feel like the casting, they nailed the casting. Visually it was really good. You didn't like the casting. Who didn't you like?
I didn't like Katara. I know the dialogue and exposition was pretty bad, and the actors did the best they could with the script. Like, I'm not faulting the actors, but they butchered Katara's character so bad. I just can't help but not like whoever played that person because they're in that role.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking is, because I'm saying I think they nailed the look of it. Did she butcher it? Did they butcher what is it that you don't? I think
they just didn't write her character well in this live action, because in the animated show, Katara is fierce, lively, and
so So let's get into like the characters.
I want to pause real quick just for this. Like, I don't want to say it's the actors. They're all very young actors. Okay, when it comes to this, you see young actors. These are very large roles to be able to fill and to act in. And when Katara, when I see this character, the only thing I know is the movie previously and what I watched in these 8 episodes. And in the beginning, I could see a little bit of a flow, not that much development, but I feel like the writers kind of were bouncing back and forth on like how they wanted her to, play into the group, the main group, really. And I feel like they bounced off a couple things and they couldn't stick to like one solid thing. So,
but this is what I was gonna say. I think like look-wise is what I was saying, is that I think they nailed like the look of everybody and who they were casting for it. I think what I was trying to say was that I think despite them being child actors and everything, the lack of, because if you watch them on all the interviews they've done and the things, like it really shows like how like much they play with each other and how much they like joke around and like the actual interactions between each other, which doesn't show through in the show. There's a lot of stifling that I felt like in turn it might have been from the director, or in turn other like executives were just like, I feel like the family and friendship aspect of it doesn't get to shine through because they don't let them act and goof around as much as like the kids would. And I think that's from the absence of the series.
I don't think that's why it's absent. I think
the tone,
why you're not picking up on that from the characters is because all of the plot beats that they're like mixing around, because there are things that happen in the animated, even in filler episodes, that provide an opportunity for the characters to develop
and grow. And that's what is lacking in the series, is that there's not much. There's a story being told and the story being progressed, but there's not really any development or any way to get really attached to any character, because there's no emotion put behind any of the writing that they put.
I think that's true for some, but not for all.
And I want to say this, just because after watching it, I wanted to see what other people said. So I talked to other people too as well that have watched the animated, and you're going from the original animated series very funny, comedic. It's cartoon. You got to have those serious aspects and you got to have those goofy ones because they're still kids, right? But you could tell in this Netflix adaptation that it's a much more serious tone, and that reflects throughout it. So there's not too many. There's little points of jokes that you can sing, especially with Aang. Like when they just get to Umashu and I remember Chris is sitting on the couch and I said, "Oh, when is he going to go onto a ball of air and fly around?" And then like 2 seconds later, he went out with the kids and you saw him kind of rolling around on the ground with it, and he runs into the statue and all the kids are laughing and stuff. But yeah, there's only like small little bits that you can see of like the childness of the characters.
But I agree with Sai because it definitely has a darker tone. Like in Kyoshi Island, everyone there is hopeless, because the Avatar disappeared and it created a world without hope. And that's like the tone the showrunners are going here. They want to have that feel, and that's why all this playfulness is absent from the characters. Like they're living in a darker world. It's not as playful as the animated, makes it out to be.
But the animated isn't as playful. It's a very dark series hidden within, in turn, that playfulness. The show is honest. The cartoon is honestly way darker than, in turn, a lot of the beats other than the first and last episode.
I don't know. I can say the part where I felt like, holy shit, this is dark, was when Katara, what's the god name? The creepy guy with the face, Ko?
Yeah.
Ko? When Katara's in the hut and she's reliving the experience with her mom gets killed. And like her mom's like, "I'm the waterbender," and then like he gets real close to her face immediately because she pretends like she can waterbend and just full on the face roasted. That at that point I felt like it in me just going, I was like, oh my god. And then like
is that
Ko
darker or is that just more brutal?
Well, but that's the thing. That type of tone I don't think would be in a kid's cartoon on Nickelodeon.
I don't know.
I can't speak to that point, but I can just say what I felt when I watched these 8 episodes. And I'd have to look to Chris or yourself on
all I'm saying is that
how you guys felt.
I know the tone they're going for, but you can still have all of that and still have, in turn, these moments that highlight more of the character development, the more of the child aspect in their personalities, which I think it's overshadowed for trying to do this, which the series balanced way more in it.
I mean, look, I think at the end of the day I think the pacing, more episodes, because it really works when they can slow things down a bit, and they're taking more time. Like after watching this is what I found myself doing. I want to see more, so I'm looking at like the original series and everything, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should watch that just to get a little bit more information, because just from what Chris is telling me, because I was asking him questions when he was over and we watched the first 2 episodes. I know I asked him a bunch of questions on like little things like, hey, does this actually happen? Is this in the animated series? Look, this doesn't happen a lot where Chris says he agrees with me at points, so I feel very good right now if Chris is agreeing with me.
Look, I'm not saying the bottom line. I'm not saying not to like this. There are things to like. There are things in turn to enjoy through it, but I'm just also bringing up that I think too that there's a lot of things that they did miss quite significantly. Not even taking into consideration of like it has to be a shot for shot. I'm not in turn saying it needs to be a die-hard recreation of it. There are plenty of reasons to improve and in turn expand upon it in series. I just think that in turn they, with pacing and the way they allowed characters to act and behave, just didn't help it in trying to sell the idea of this story that's been like a global phenomenon for the last 20 years.
I mean, my question to you two would be like those things that they sacrificed, right? The scenes, whatever it may be that was in the animated that they couldn't bring here, that they did differently. How much did that negatively affect, from your opinions, the story as a whole to tell the main points? When it comes to what was changed, again, they have to change things because it's 8 episodes. They can't squeeze everything in, so they're going to do that. The things they did change, the good and the bad, when you look at it as a whole, what were some of the bad things that they changed that you would have thought like, oh, that's going to be ruining for the story? Like, those are the questions that I have for you guys, because again, I didn't see the animated. We can save it for if we get into the more of the bad stuff. It was just,
well, one of the things that they changed that I don't understand why they changed it like this, and it might already be resolved within this season, but it's the episode when they find the burning forest and they have to meet Heibai, the forest spirit.
Which is their first introduction to the spirits.
Right. And that whole episode just was wrong, in my opinion, because in the animated series, they go meet, they try to find Heibai and they encounter Ko, the face stealer.
And the very last episode.
Yeah, and that has, like, that interaction with Aang and Ko is very significant for him, and what they did in the live action completely eliminated that, and what they did with Ko was just make him an obstacle to rescue Katara and Sokka. Like, it was just very confusing because he goes to they find the forest, they go to Heibai, they find Ko, and then I feel like before that maybe they meet Wan Shi Tong, who was in the library, and I don't know if they're ever going to use him again because they introduced him so early.
Yes, that made me angry. That made me very angry.
I feel like they're sprinkling pieces of like fan service, like, oh, you know this owl, so let's use him here since we might not be doing this episode later. That's what I think they're doing, and they add a lot of that throughout.
What was the main point, though, of Aang going into the spirit realm in the forest, though? Like, in the animated, like, what was that main? What was the important thing that he learned from that?
Heibai, when he meets Ko, the face stealer, that was him, supposed to, like, come to terms with his grief and use that as fuel later on. And he finds out about the comet, Sozin's comet, and that kind of sets the rest of the show in motion.
Yeah, that sets up season 2 and everything.
It's like a kicking point then.
Yeah.
Okay. Because from the...
Go ahead.
I was going to say from the Netflix... Like, for me watching this Netflix series, the tone I got from that forest, like why he did that, because I did feel like they were in there for a while, and he did a couple different things, like going to the temple and stuff. They made him go to the
Fire Nation.
It just didn't make sense. That why would you go all the way to the Fire Nation?
They hit the blend button and was like, these characters will take the place of these characters and these characters. And one thing, I guess, to just like sum that up, and then
I just want to actually finish. Yeah, let me. Yeah, go ahead and say that, and then I'll.
Well, I was just going to say is that I feel like one of the problems I had with is that everything that was an arc or an important. I shouldn't say everything. A majority of things that were a substantial arc or lesson, or in turn moment in the series for the first season, got dumbed down into an Easter egg or background thing. That being like that episode with it and showing in turn all those other characters that don't show up for other points. The same thing too with Katara finding the water sack in episode 3 of that she carries around and is her main like artillery for it. But I just feel like there's a lot of that of like, oh yeah, are we ever going to use that? Or are we going to go back to it? Or even going to bother like using it down the other line? Let's just use it now for the sake of like an Easter.
So from what I was saying, what I got from Aang being in the forest, going to the spirit world, and then going to the Fire Nation temple to what was his name again? The
Roku.
Fire Nation Avatar? Roku?
Roku, yeah. And I also don't like what they did with him.
So what I got that they wanted to get the point across, I feel like, was that Aang had to learn that it was very dangerous for the people that he is close to or loves, that they're going to get hurt, basically, and that he should, be taking, like, the lesson is, like, all the other avatars are saying, you're on your own, you have to do this on your own, or else everyone's going to get hurt around you. And that's, from my perspective, at least, the only reason why he went into the forest.
But that's the progression of the cartoon of like showing like all these things and like the bonds that he builds to show that like those aren't necessarily things you can have in being the person that you are and being the avatar. The thing that really made me upset going into that episode was that they pretty much backhanded what Boomi's. That's pretty much what Boomy attempts to do with Aang in this adaptation of it, with being a little more in turn to the point and like rough with him as opposed to what he was beforehand.
No, I think what they did with Boomy's character in the live action is
Netflix.
Yeah, the Netflix live action is they took his character, who in the animated version was the one that taught Aang the lesson, and made him into like a corrupt king politician who is also corrupt. Hopeless. Well, he gave off that vibe. Like,
yeah, he gives off that vibe, but
they said he was like in it. That he was like losing his mind, basically.
But like, he was a likable character, and in the live action, they made him unlikable. And it's Aang that teaches him the lesson that like he can do this with his friends, and like, it's so not his fault.
Well, that's what I didn't like, was that in turn he pretty much what they in turn said in an interview for it, where they were showing up the intern show that like Aang needed to take this more seriously. Like you're saying, this is in turn supposed to be a much more serious tone with it. In the series, you know, he plays games and he makes it seem like in turn it's not as serious as it is, and have Aang come to that conclusion. But in this, in turn, he takes a more serious approach with him. In turn, tells him like, you need to understand that you're the Avatar and you need to do this. And he comes in and says, no, I can do this with my friends. But then literally in the next episode, they go ahead and they say the same exact thing that Boomy was telling him, that like, you need to take this more serious. This is not something that like you can be like doing with your friends. You're the Avatar. This is your responsibility shoulder. And the fact that like he says that, and then he learns and says, you know what, maybe you can do it with your friends. That's like his learning point in it. But then literally in the next episode, they double down on what Boomy was telling him.
My perspective on that episode in the Netflix adaptation is that he is learning that, you know, how he can do, like how he has to accomplish this journey. Is that by himself? Is that with his friends? But ultimately what I felt was that he was winning Boomy back as a friend, because he wasn't there for 100 years. And that's what I ultimately felt. Because when you fast forward to the end of it, and you know they take over, the Fire Nation takes over, and like he defended it completely. I feel like, for me, not knowing the rest of it, I think like, oh, Aang and the group are gonna go save Boomy eventually.
Yeah, you're right.
He won him over as a friend. So
you're right in a sense. It does both. I just don't like how they went about doing that.
I wanted to see more of that city, though, because that was actually one of my favorite cities.
Yeah, Omashu's really cool. Like that in the animated version, I love the Omashu episodes.
No, I didn't. That whole interaction where we get in the cartoon where Boomy and Aang are just out having fun and everything and showing like their friendship, and they chalked it up to him giving him just the whistle, which again is another thing from season 2, which I felt like was just to have. Like, hey, we're going to show you this thing and you're going to be like super excited to see it. But especially too for the little amount we get to see of Appa and Momo, it was just like, why bother doing that and still have just the same conversation of like,
they're just like cameo characters
having fun. And especially too how they end that episode on them going sledding throughout the city.
I did like, though, and I know that the whistle was given at a different time, but I did like how Aang pulled it out and was like, this looks like, what is Appa called again? Like, what is his? Sky Bison?
Yeah.
He was saying, like, I use this to call, what he said, like, my friend or something like that. He basically just using that, like, hey, I still have what you gave me as a kid, basically. And I liked that connection that he had, because he was trying to humanize, like, you know, I was frozen in time. It's not, like, you know, I'm trying to rectify that now, kind of.
Chris, I feel like you're just very mad at my takes on this.
No, I'm not mad at your takes. Like, I know we're going to have differing opinions. What I'm mad...
You're literally pausing after.
No, I'm not pausing. I'm not mad at your takes.
Is it mine?
No, it's no one's takes that I'm
Is it the interruption or something?
Yeah, it's the interruptions. Because that was happening a lot.
Okay.
Right, go on, Chris. We love you.
Well, now I don't have anything to say, so...
You're not going to say it back?
So, we were talking about what we don't like, what they changed about Boomy. There's a big change that I didn't like the fitting of, but I like the idea of, was how earlier on they introduced Azula. Because in the animated version, she comes in season 2, just pops in one day. But they introduce this character, gives her a little role, but the way they handled it and the timing of it, just I felt like could have been a little bit better. But I think it's a cool like take on this character and what they can do for the story. And that's why I say like this show has a lot of good moments, good ideas. Some just doesn't work well. Some is just completely bad. Like giving Aang the ability to fly, which he never had in the show.
I think that was great.
Yeah. Like it's a thing in the Avatar world.
I didn't like that. No.
But it's just like what I don't understand why they made some of these decisions, but at the same time I can appreciate other decisions that they make. Like for example, Zuko finding out that his like crew, or it wasn't Zuko finding that out, it was his crew member finding out. The Lieutenant Lee. Yeah, that Zuko literally saved their lives, and then they show him respect.
The
like
41st.
That's a great expansion on a storyline that's already existing. Like they do things so well.
Yeah.
But some things just don't, hit the mark.
Yeah.
That episode was great. I loved that episode.
It's one of the best ones. That and episode 6, I think, was one of the stronger ones too.
I think Zuko and Uncle Iroh have very strong.
It's like, Zuko, Iroh, and Sokka, I want to say, are my top 3 characters that they just really did well.
So, any of the episodes with Zuko and Iroh I think are great, with the exception of them rewrite. So I would have liked a whole episode of just like, if you want to talk of like mixing everything and kind of, to fit the formula of it, taking a lot of those episodes of the Fire Nation and in turn the backstory of that, it should have been one full episode as opposed to like a little sprinkle here and there. And I feel like too with, I just feel like they wanted Azula was interesting. I didn't like that they showed her already using electricity and everything. It was just like,
I thought that was badass, though.
Really, it is.
I didn't know that you could do that.
But
I didn't know you could do that. So that was me seeing it for the first time, and I was just like, "Yo, what?"
But I feel like that kind of will cheapen it later in how it's supposed to like come out and shown from like in season 2 of like where her mental state goes and where her like
spoiler for me.
Yeah,
and
but
also
I think
go
I was just gonna say I think what it's just like what makes it a little bit harder of that is that they're throwing so many characters in there that may not necessarily need to have been in it or shown in it, that like if you take some of those out, maybe you could have let some of the other parts of the episodes breathe more.
Well, the thing is, they cut a bunch of arcs. Like they cut the prison arc with the Earthbenders, the Great Divide in the Valley. Fortune Teller and Bato, and most importantly, I think the one that they should have included was the story arc with John and Aang learning firebending and burning Kintara, and him developing his fear of firebending. Like that's so important for the show.
And I think the problem of why that didn't work into the formula that they were writing was that the main focus for them to get to the Northern Water Tribe is not to learn bending, it's to stop the disaster of what happened. And I feel like
they could still tell it. I feel like
they still could, but that's kind of where it was like, what is your main focus here? Because they have that of like, oh, I have a vision and I need to stop in turn another atrocity from occurring that I wasn't there for. And it's not up until we get to that where he starts even considering like, I need to start taking the Avatar more serious and doing all those things and having all that stuff of his true responsibilities. And it's more of like, we got to get there. We got to just stop it. We got to save them. And in turn, there's a big giant war going on and like a lot of other things. And I just feel like that coupled with like, all right, let's cram all these Easter eggs in and these other characters that may not necessarily need to be here and just showing. I would have really liked, I felt like they showed too much of Fire Lord Ozai. Yeah. I would have liked him to be more of just kind of like recessed and let all these other characters take the front to build him up for what would be more of like the final episode or season 2. I felt
they spent too much money to not have that much screen time.
Yes. But I just felt like it was like he didn't seem as menacing and didn't seem as like grand as I would have liked him to be.
I could see why you would say that. I agree with you to a certain extent.
I know he's like planning all those things, and like it plays off in the final episode when he's like been putting Zuko and Azula against each other and like building that up. But I just feel like it would have been more of a like just like from the series, like they showed more of a silhouette and more of like back and like more of a big reveal into that character. Yes, for like who he is and like what you see more in season like 3 of him.
Mm-hmm. I was just gonna say, while I agree with you in terms of him appearing menacing, like you could kind of feel that he is a very powerful firebender. Like in the scene with the Agni Kai with him and Zuko, like his fire came out more fierce and faster with its delivery. Like you could feel the power coming from him. That might just be me from what I've noticed. He still gives that like big bad energy, but I definitely agree. Like they should have, you know,
I just think they wanted everyone to be. Yeah. They wanted everyone to be like introduced and forefront and you to know them, which comes with like building like, oh, you have to build a community who's going to watch it. So that's understandable. But I just feel like there was a lot of like people to get a lot of use of everybody when you could be more like sprinkling and showing that, or keep it to like one episode.
This whole live action thing, it just really comes to show that Avatar was animated in that medium, right? Like that's how the story is best told. And this just comes to show that some things shouldn't be adapted because people are going to have such high expectations and like expect it to be as good as the animated version, and it's never going to be that. Some things just shouldn't be adapted. And I feel like Avatar, while we love more Avatar content, you know, the good, the bad, like M. Night Shyamalan's bad, but we laugh about it. We're happy it was made it so we can make fun of it. But, you know, some things just shouldn't be touched.
I think, so I want to touch real quick just on 2 things. When we look at something like Chris, you love the animated, John, you love the animated, the original series. For me, who has never watched it, like, for me to first see this Netflix, this has now hooked me where I'm like, wow, this is really good. To my perspective, I don't know much of anything else past that. Makes me want to look into the animated series, right? It makes me want to know a little bit more about the background, the lore. What were these characters like? What was the development like? If we look at examples, we look at like Harry Potter, we look at Lord of the Rings. They're not going to fit everything into there. They have to make changes. So I feel like you have you guys who are diehard animated series fans. You guys have the highest expectations of what you want it to be. There's people who are the average, you know, person who's just watching random stuff and is like, oh, look, this is a new series. Let me click on it. Let me watch it. And then they're like, oh, I know of Avatar. I've never watched it before, though. And then this introduced them into the culture of the Avatar, The Last Airbender. And I feel like it could open up a lot more for other people like me. I'm going to be interested in watching the animated series now. And the second part I want to touch on real quick that I really did enjoy for this was the Asian representation, both behind the the lenses and everyone in the cast in front of the camera. Like big difference from what we had previously.
There was something you said that I had a response to. I can't remember.
You'll text it to me at like 1 a.m. You're like, oh, hey.
The representation was way better than the original movie and everything, with kind of the flip-flopping around of where everyone was supposed to be. But I was a little disappointed with Omashu, and in turn how that got turned around into like India when it's supposed to be mainland China, and like that's in turn the nation of people that it's supposed to represent. Because the Fire Nation is supposed to be Japanese, in turn, Earthbenders are supposed to be China, and like the Great Walls and the structures and everything of that. The Waterbenders is supposed to be the forget what it's like Eskimos and everything from there, from like Asia. And then the Airbenders are based on like Buddhism and everything from that. But they just kind of the look and everything of changing with it. It wasn't bad, but it was just felt very kind of out of place.
I mean, I saw pictures of the king. What's his name? Boomy. And in the animated series, he looks Indian to me. My point is this: I think the King Boomy looks the same. Like, I think that was a good casting. I don't know how Chris feels about it, but I want to see more of him.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know what like Avatar nations are supposed to represent in real, life.
Yeah, that's where they in turn pulled like all the architecture and everything from those in turn different nationalities and in turn cultures for it, which has me wondering what they're going to do with season 2 of it when that comes and we do get to see more of the Earth Nation. Is that going to be more focused on in turn India culture and putting aside in turn Chinese structure and culture and like architecture for it?
So.
Or is Omashu kind of like on the outer like scope of like China, and that's why
Omashu
it is what it is?
In the animated version is outside of the like Earth Kingdom. It's still in the Earth like realm. I don't know what it's called, but they're separate, And while Asia as a continent is very large, India is
I know my
from that.
geography.
Yeah, but we're still talking about like the lands made up in here are just a completely different continent. It's not like they cut out what it is here. They influenced parts of the real world into it. That's what John, I also feel like
I didn't notice what you mentioned about Omashu in a live action Netflix being more like culturally Indian. I didn't pick up on that.
If you look at like the garb and everything that they're wearing, that's significantly heavily influenced by like Indian culture.
Do we have any other good talking points at least? Can we come to the conclusion of now like watching the original movie, the animated series, and Netflix currently? Can we say from our perspectives, I will say for me that the Netflix series did a great job past the original movie. For me, it's hooked me into the series and want to know more, because when Avatar originally came out, I was not interested whatsoever. I was in high school. I was doing, sports stuff, skateboarding. Like, I wasn't watching Avatar, which just wasn't a show that reached out to me. But, like, seeing this now, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty cool, and it makes me want to watch more. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like anything that's live action that has to do with Avatar will always beat the original M. Night Shyamalan live action. That just is always going to be bottom totem pole. I don't think anything could do worse, to be honest. Like, it was really bad. Like I said, I think some things shouldn't be adapted. And while they do a great job with the VFX and they do some things really well, it just doesn't have the same effect that the animated version has. And every first season of a show is always the worst season. Not every show, but it's always a rocket. I don't want to say always. It just, first seasons usually aren't the best, right? So seasons 2 and 3 might be so much better. You just never know what we're going to get. But I'm here for the ride. I thought whether, scenes were bad or good, it made me laugh. Like, It's fun. And that's why I say it's okay.
You ever have somebody read, you get assigned reading in your English class and you didn't read the book and you ask one of your friends to like summarize it for you. They like tell you it and like everything that they thought and like so you can get ready to present your thing. To me, this was the culmination of asking a friend who read the Spark Notes his interpretation of it and then passed it to me, and then I kind of gave that out. You're gonna get some things, but at the end of the day, it's nowhere near where it needed to be.
Yeah.
I
agree with you. I can definitely see like this is someone's explanation of all of first season Avatar and just like didn't do a great job explaining it.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, this happened and this happened and this happened and
and this also happened.
Yeah. And I think this guy was there. It was designed for a group of people to get introduced to it. Whether or not it fully succeeds on all of that, I don't think it does. I think for maybe a new introduction for people, it might. But yeah, I would say watch the series if you want a better story. Watch M. Night's movie. Surprisingly, more for practical effects. Honestly, the Aang's airbending looks a little bit better in that. If you go and watch it, he's doing flips in the practicality of the air. You shrug and you smirk.
I will say some things in Netflix's live action relating to the airbending and flipping looked a little weird. But I'm not going to say M. Night did it better.
There was a specific scene in the Earth Bending Kingdom where Aang, the boulder comes back from behind him and he jumps in slow motion. Does it? I saw somebody on Instagram. They did the side by side from the animated to that, and he does the exact same thing. And I remember you made the comment saying, "Why did he jump over it like that in slow mo?" Whoa! And I was like, they did the same thing in the animated. It just made me laugh when I finally saw that.
It just looks weird when you have it.
I wouldn't slow mo it.
Yeah, because because it's all CGI. Practical effects that he pulled off in that movie, putting aside terrible script, like terrible casting, the practicality of a lot of those effects looked better. And I think had they used more practicality in a lot of these smaller scenes, would have played up a lot of the humor. In terms, like I said, this is a very physical humor that is missing from it.
In the scene with Zuko and Aang, I feel like is what you're talking about and how they did it practically really well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of just like
more scenes of that would make the show so much better, and I agree.
Yeah, he was holding back his firebending because he didn't want to get caught.
Yeah,
and that was the big thing. Real quick, so the three of us have different perspectives. I enjoyed it because I haven't watched the animated, so this is getting me into the series and it's making me enjoy it. Chris is like, it's okay. The animated, the original is going to be the best, which I would agree. It has the most data, right? And I believe there is novels too, right?
Yeah,
I think I saw something online.
They did take some content from those novels, actually.
There's a lot. There's a lot of novels and turn stories, and
so there's much more content to even delve into as well. And then John is he doesn't like it whatsoever. He's going to stick to what he likes, which is understandable. I wanted to try to just bring this up real quick from Rotten Tomatoes. The average tomato meter is a 60 from the critics, and the average audience score is actually a 75. So I believe it's gone up. I think I remember checking it right when we finished it. I don't even know what day it was, but
it went down. Yeah, last I saw it was like at 90.
I want to say like those ratings are pretty accurate around like the board from what I've been hearing. Like it's very mixed, I would say.
Yeah.
But in terms of audience reaction, I feel like for a lot of people, it's not going to hit. For some people, it's going to be fun, especially children. Like they're going to love this show.
Yeah.
But
it was rated PG.
I know. I wish it wasn't because I feel like if it was PG-13, it might have.
Well, that's what the original cartoon was PG-13.
They could have dropped one. They could have dropped one F-bomb, but this was also in 2007, the animated series. So I feel like now they censor so much.
To speak on Sokka's character development, like while in the animated show, that was his whole thing. Like that's what he grew from and became humbled by Suki. Like in this version, he learns his skills and his purpose. Like that's where his character development is coming from. Like meeting the Mechanist, he tells him like you're a great engineer and like you can't hide or run away from your calling. You need to embrace those things.
Yeah, and in the forest, like when he learned, like what's his, the despair or whatever, like, and he sees his father saying he's a disappointment, and if the other people weren't there to help, like he would never get anywhere, and it's him trying to
call him a disappointment.
Yeah, that's the whole.
He just doesn't believe in him, essentially. Like
he literally says that word. His father doesn't say it, but when he tells
Yeah, he thinks he's a disappointment from what failing his dad, but his dad doesn't think he's disappointment with it.
Well, that's his feeling on it. He feels a disappointment because his father said those things about him, which to me, his father was disappointed in him because of that and expected more. Because he said, "I expected more."
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you, but I like what they did with Sokka's character.
I think he's one of the best.
It makes his interaction with Suki fall flat, and it loses its depth. But as a whole, what they're doing with him, I think, is a nice, refreshing take on his character.
I guess I don't know. I think you still could have changed that. I do agree that in turn they're focused more on from him just being the pseudo tough guy into this intellectual is interesting, but the whole thing of they didn't bother to have him when he's learning dress up in the garb and fully embrace their traditions. Everything there, I just feel there was a lot of not really much other than that episode of really showing his growth.
I don't think that's I don't think it's over. His growth is going to occur in other situations.
Because he learned a lot at the last episode for himself with the princess. Mm-hmm. So, and about himself, because then he realizes oh, you're the fox spirit I saw, and that's where I know you from. And she knows his, what he was so upset about before.
I feel what we need to agree on is that this show, while at its heart is still Avatar, and it tries to maintain loyal to it, it's going to be different, and we just have to embrace that and be okay with it, because we know we're not going to get verbatim what we watched as kids.
Yeah. It would be just a remaster. They would be we're going to remaster, Dragon Ball Z when they remastered that.
I'm okay with it because I had fun watching it, and I'm curious to see what other changes they have in store now because of all the changes they already made, whether it's good or bad.
We have some good opinions, though.
Other than that, though, I don't think I really have other thoughts.
No.
Yeah, I'm kind of gassed out when it comes to it.
I probably won't be tuning in for season 2, but yeah.
I will.
No worries.
And I'll be tuning in.
Chris can come over to my house. We'll watch it.
I'll be tuning in to the new...
That's fine. I wasn't invited.
You were working. You were invited.
No.
Go on, Chris.
No, it doesn't matter anymore.
Too much bickering.
Hey, we weren't interrupting you there. We were having a conversation still.
All right. Well, even better. We appreciate if you made it this far watching this episode, this bonus episode, this mini episode of the podcast on the Netflix Avatar The Last Airbender. Tune in. I believe our next episode will be reviewing our top 8 of our winter 2024 lineup. And we'll be coming to what is the best of the winter 2024. Anybody else got any last things before we sign off?
The anime awards are this weekend.
Didn't that already happen?
I thought that happened.
The voting happened, but the actual announcing of the awards and the whole event is this weekend, where they're going to make the announcements of who wins. And
Attack on Titan all across the board. You already know.
No, well, probably.
Stay tuned. We'll see. I know John's going to send us links. So.
Yeah. It's happening at I think 4 a.m. on Saturday.
You're awake. Because you'll be there.
Because it's happening in Japan.
Oh, even better. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
We're trying